Hello, how are you doing today? Do you like having to labor? No, me neither. But it turns out labor is a very crucial part in our world. This is shown in wars. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. Labor and how it affected and continues to affect war today. War wouldn't be nearly what it is today if it weren't for labor. Without labor, none of the wars that have happened would have resulted in the way they did. China's involvement in World War I was largely centered around labor, with many European workers being sent to the front lines. Labor shortages were a pressing issue. To address this, China was recruited by the Allies to provide labor for the war effort. Over 140,000 Chinese workers were sent to Europe, where they were tasked with a variety of labor and intensive duties, including building infrastructure, digging trenches, and unloading supplies. Despite being promised fair pay and humane treatment, many Chinese workers were subjected to brutal conditions and abuse. In addition, the Chinese laborers were often paid significantly less than their European counterparts for doing the same work, and many were not provided with adequate food, shelter, or medical care. Despite these challenges, Chinese laborers played a crucial role in keeping the Allied war effort running, and their contributions should be recognized and applauded. Se llama ella va a hablar trabajo infantil durante la guerra.
What was it like being a child during child labor and in World War I? During World War I, children worked more hours than before. Fathers were going out to war, and the women and children were left to do both the work at home and in factories. Children still worked in factories and mines and would spend time knitting scarves, socks, and other necessities for soldiers. Older children worked in hospitals and helped wounded soldiers. The working conditions for these children were not good, and children were working 12 or more hour shifts without breaks. One story starts with a girl. Her name was Mary, and she was 9 or 10 years old and was working in a glass factory one day when her apron was caught on a piece of machinery. She cried and yelled for help, but no one came, and the machine was too strong and pulled her in, and her body was caught on the machine. Blood splattered everywhere, and she was killed almost instantly. Later on, the 12-hour workday was abolished, and workers couldn't work more than 8 hours a day. This had a positive impact on children as well as other workers. Before this, children worked 12 or more hour shifts without breaks, and children were both physically and mentally exhausted. Se llama Jacob, él va a hablar de contaminación.
How did the factory pollution law develop? Well, there was smoke in the air and contaminating water, and that was harming clouds, animals, and people. Another type of pollution was COVID. 2 years ago, a girl by the name of Ella, and she had severe asthma, and she was exposed to nitrogen dioxide from the pollution in the air. In the water, it is about the same. For example, in 1875, the government passed the Rivers Pollution Act. 7 million people die each year from pollution, along with 1 million marine mammals from a range of birds, fish, sharks, turtles. Do you want to know why these people and animals are dying? It's because factory owners put these children and people to work 24/7. Se llama Wyatt, él va a hablar de Perez.
The Maxim machine gun was the first machine gun ever produced that was automatic and helped us lay out the playing fields for World War I and many other wars like the Spanish-American War and before that. Hiram Maxim was an apprentice to a carriage manufacturer at 14. He was born in Sangersville in 1840, and he demonstrated his intensive talent while learning a trade by creating mousetraps that reset automatically and killed rats from nearby mills. At age 26, he received the first of his 271 patents for his curling iron. By the time he was in his mid-30s, Maxim had advanced to the position of chief engineer of the New York, United States-based electric company, where he created carbon filaments for the electric light bulb. He presented an electric pressure regulator at the 1881 Paris exhibition and received the Legion d'Honneur, and later on moved to London to pursue the Maxim machine gun. And inside of 1884 was the first year that he was able to produce the first Maxim machine gun ever made. And they were produced by child labor and just labor in general, because at the time they did not have assembly lines. And when World War I started, July 28th, 1914, for 3 years we did not use any automatic machine guns until 1917 to 1918, which, even though we only had used them for about a year inside of World War I, they accounted for almost 40% of the deaths, but in more conservative statistics as about 25%. And the Maxim machine gun, even in newer situations like the Russo-Ukrainian War that started in 2014 but escalated in 2022, they have been seen using over 100-year-old Maxim machine guns. And they still hold up today and show that they are reliable and have inspired many other weapons of that time. Se llama Stasia ella va hablar de periodismo amarillo.
During the Spanish-American War, there was a type of writing introduced called yellow journalism. And during yellow journalism, there was multiple newspapers and comics that were inspiring people to help with their own opinions during the Spanish-American War. And as the Spanish-American War began, there was younger kids at the age of 14 through 16 that were leaving homes and going to the U.S. and others going to Spain. And as that was happening, there was other kids working in factories and kids helping out by selling newspapers. And as the newspapers were being sold, most kids did not like how they weren't getting paid as much. And as the kids saw that the newspapers weren't getting as popular as much, they decided to raise awareness. And as they're raising awareness, most kids decided to make their own newspapers and actually talk for themselves. And as that was going through for yellow journalism discontinued after the Spanish-American War ended in 1898 in August. And the boys with the newspapers decided that they decided to move it around all over the world and also help with other people in the other states. And there was one boy who was 14, and he decided to have his own story, and he was describing how all of the things that were happening throughout that ship in the state. He decided to say that he wanted to put his own words in and help out. Se llama Arif Eva de Education.
Once engaged in child labor, children were often unable to return to school. In many cases, employers actively prohibit children from attending school. While the others, the long hours demanded by employers make schooling practically impossible. World Worldwide, the International Labor Organization estimates that 22,000 child laborers killed at work each year. Several working conditions, including crowded and unclean factories, a lack of safety codes, and long hours were the norm. Children could be paid less and were less likely to organize into unions. Working children were typically unable to attend school, creating a cycle of poverty that was difficult to break. Sayom Crandall hablar de la conclusion.
In conclusion, labor played a significant role in wars throughout history. From the labor-intensive tasks of building fortifications, digging trenches, and constructing military equipment, to the vital support roles of supplying food, ammunition, and medical aid. The contribution of labor cannot be understated. Women and minorities have also played important roles in wartime labor, breaking down traditional gender and racial barriers in the workplace. However, the exploitation of laborers, including forced labor, and the use of child soldiers remains a persistent issue in many conflicts. It's crucial to recognize and honor the sacrifices and contributions of laborers in war, while also advocating for fair and just treatment for all those who contribute to the war effort.